If it was surreal to watch the Strzok hearing, imagine sitting at the center of it. Congressman Eric Swalwell was there.
Mr. Strzok, in a moment we will continue with the hearing, but based on your refusal to answer the question at the conclusion of the day, we will be recessing the hearing and you will be subject to recall to allow the committee to consider proceeding with a contempt citation.
A point of order, Mr. Chairman. Will the committee also consider contempt for Mr. Bannon, who refused to answer Mr. Gowdy's questions when he was actually under subpoena?
That is not a proper point of order in this hearing.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Gowdy, do you remember
Parliamentary inquiry.
The time is controlled by the gentleman from
Parliamentary inquiry.
A parliamentary inquiry is not in order when the gentleman from South Carolina.
Yeah. There were so many times, the California Democrat joins us now, Eric, where it felt like Republicans were asking him questions, but then when he started giving answers he didn't like, they would cut him off to try and stop those answers from being on the record because it wasn't going exactly the way they wanted to. What is your take as to what exactly happened yesterday?
Good morning, Mika. The Republicans did not show up yesterday to hear the answers. They wanted to use the questions to undermine Bob Mueller's investigation. And I asked for Mr. Bannon to be subpoenaed because he was under subpoena when he testified before the House Intelligence Committee. A number of members, including Mr. Gowdy, asked him questions about his involvement with the Russians during the campaign and the administration. He refused to answer, but he was never brought in for contempt proceedings, as was threatened of Mr. Strzok. And so I wanted to make sure that the public saw the deep, deep inconsistency, which I think really illustrates that this is all an effort to protect the president and nothing more than that when our ballot box and our democracy needs more protecting than ever.
David Ignatius.
Congressman, I wanted to ask you what you would say to a member of the public who was watching this, whose conclusion was, this is all just politics. I don't know about Peter Strzok, but is this just a circus? There is that feeling in the country, and a lot of people fear that that's going to undermine Mueller's investigation. It gets swallowed up in this political environment. How do you think that can be prevented?
Yeah, well, I would also say it was the wrong hearing and the wrong priorities. Children are still separated at the border. This is actually the committee that has jurisdiction to do something about it, and they did nothing for those children yesterday. But, David, I would also say, you know, for future kids who read about history in the classroom, I hope they saw yesterday that my Democratic colleagues showed up and they fought for the rule of law. As we see it under attack every single day, we are not going to allow the Republicans to break the safe of the FBI evidence locker to try and pull out evidence, to turn it over to a subject in the investigation, the President of the United States, that we stood firmly against it. And I don't think the Republicans accomplished what they sought to accomplish yesterday. But also, taking one step back here, when you put this in the greater perspective, President Trump has attacked James Comey and Peter Strzok repeatedly throughout this investigation, but those two have put their right hands up, have gone under oath to talk about their involvement in the Russian investigation. That distinguishes them from him. So let's see if he's willing to do the same and talk with Bob Mueller.
Congressman, it's Heidi. How are you doing?
Hey, Heidi.
We also learned about some of the context of these texts that were sent. For instance, the Republicans came back again and again to this text, "We will stop it." And he was allowed to give some context on that and said, look, this came after a series of events, including Trump denigrating the parents of a fallen war hero. What did you make of his opportunity there to kind of put some of these texts in context?
Well, first, Heidi, I don't like that he was talking that way because we want FBI agents to be, you know, sort of above the politics and not even have the perception of impropriety. But there was no evidence, and I sought to demonstrate that there were other agents working on this case independent of Mr. Strzok. So he was not the sole decision maker to close the Clinton investigation. He was not the sole decision maker to open the Trump investigation. And when I was a prosecutor and you had questionable conduct by a police officer, you would seek to rehabilitate their testimony by showing all of the evidence around them that existed. He was a pebble in a mountain of evidence that was concerning about Donald Trump and his contacts with Russia.
All right, Congressman Eric Swalwell, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I want to do.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.